I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And we are back in the new year, so I decided to update my Best Picture predictions, start the new year off right before we get into some of the other award shows that have yet to come. But if you're new to the channel, what I do every single week is pick a different Oscar category and do a deep dive of that category, give my predictions to ultimately help you make your own predictions come Oscar morning. Now, we've done all of the categories aside from the shorts, which we never do a deep dive on. So for the next couple of weeks here, we're going to be reacting and sort of trying to understand and predict some of the other award shows, Critics' Choice, Golden Globes, things like that, before finally giving final Oscar predictions before the Oscar nominations come out. And then once the Oscar nominations come out, of course, we're going to try to predict what will win. And as always, I really appreciate if you comment below. Let me know your thoughts. What are your predictions? What do you think of mine? What do you think about the future of award season? Do you have certain movies that maybe you're rooting for? I'd love to hear all that stuff in the comments down below. And subscribe to the channel so you never miss a video. Always, you can expect a video at Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. But there's also going to be additional videos over the coming weeks as I give my predictions and reactions to certain award shows. But without further ado, let's jump into things. My predictions, top 10 for what I think is going to get nominated for Best Picture category, including a couple of possible contenders, with my first prediction going to Oppenheimer. This is still, for me, the clear frontrunner, not only to get nominated, but to win. It's naturally going to get nominated. It's been getting a bunch of nominations at a bunch of award shows, as well as critics groups. It has the support from actors, but also below-the-line technical support. It really has support in every category. It's not a movie that's just going to get in for screenplay and acting. It's also going to get in, I think, for cinematography and editing and production design and things like that. But the real question is not whether or not Oppenheimer is going to get nominated, because it will. The question is whether or not it's the frontrunner to win. And I think it is, because the big thing for me is it has the acting support. If you look at the past 5 Best Picture winners, 4 out of the 5 Best Picture winners won Best Picture, but also won one of the acting categories. I mean, even just look at last year, Everything Everywhere All at Once won 3 acting awards and then won Best Picture. Why is the actor so important? Why do they oftentimes reward an actor and then also Best Picture? Because they are the largest members of the Academy. There are more actors in the Academy than any other profession. There's not more production designers or directors or writers. So that's a big factor, because even if you look at the other Best Picture winners that didn't have an acting win, movies like Birdman or The Shape of Water, those were ensemble movies, and those movies didn't get acting wins, but they did get acting nominations. Birdman had 3, Shape of Water had 3 acting nominations, so the acting support is huge. Well, look at Oppenheimer. If you ask me, it's potentially could win 3 acting awards. Definitely 2. I think Cillian Murphy is the frontrunner to win for Best Actor. I think Robert Downey Jr. is the frontrunner to win for Best Supporting Actor. And Best Supporting Actress, I think, is still a race that's up in the air. Divine Joy Randolph sort of in a placeholder position. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a narrative of let's get Emily Blunt her Oscar. We really like Oppenheimer. And it's sort of she gets along with the film. So you have a movie that has an acting support, not only in terms of nominations, but also potentially in terms of wins. You have support also below the line. And then if you want to get into the narrative of it's Christopher Nolan, he saved cinema, he had an R-rated 3-hour blockbuster that made almost $1 billion at the box office. This is the kind of movie we want to support. We want to signal our support to. The Academy may feel like Oppenheimer is the perfect movie. Christopher Nolan's never won Best Picture before. He is one of the best directors working today. So there's a lot of sort of narrative reasons, but also sort of statistical and technical reasons as to why Oppenheimer will be the frontrunner, and I still think it is. And then my number 2 contender is going to be Poor Things. And I think this is still a strong contender because, like Oppenheimer, it has acting support. I think Emma Stone is a frontrunner to win for Best Lead Actress. Mark Ruffalo could be the sort of surprise supporting actor winner. And then we could also see a Willem Dafoe nomination as well if they really like Poor Things. It's also, in terms of the content of the movie, a weird, unique, different movie, but those are the types of movies that the Oscars have really appreciated. If you look at movies like The Shape of Water or Everything Everywhere All at Once, those are movies that would have never won 20 years ago, but with the modern Academy, they like these sort of unique, different, singular vision type stories. Now, they're not super weird like a David Lynch movie like Inland Empire or something. They are still weird-ish, but still emotionally understandable and still clear. They're maybe quirky or a little bit different, but their emotions are still resonant. And I think Poor Things sort of fits into that category. The negatives of it a little bit are that it kind of hits you over the head with the same idea and theme for its running time, but that just makes its theme clear and more easily understandable so that people aren't walking away thinking something else or thinking it's too weird or strange. It's weird enough to be different and unique and to clearly have vision, but not weird enough to isolate a bunch of members of the Academy, plus the acting support, plus even some technical support with a costume design nomination and production design. It could maybe even win visual effects. Lots of that going on as well. So it has lots of support throughout the Academy, but is also the sort of type of winner as one in the past. And then next thing you know, it wins for Emma Stone. Maybe it wins in the screenplay category, and then boom, wins Best Picture. Watch out for Poor Things. It's still absolutely a major contender. Then in my third slot, I have Barbie, and it has a lot of the same things as a movie like Oppenheimer. It's kind of sister movie in that it has acting support. I think Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling are sort of solidifying themselves as acting contenders in terms of a nomination. I think it will get in for screenplay, maybe even win. It also has that production design support and costume design support, so it has sort of the technical elements of the film too. It is, similarly to Poor Things, weird and very unique and different, but not too weird that it stopped it from being, the highest grossing movie of the year. The big thing that really, I think, stops Barbie is that it is the highest grossing movie of the year. It already won its prize. And when you look at the Oscars history, the last time they were awarded a movie Best Picture that also was the highest grossing movie of the year was all the way back in 2003 with Lord of the Rings and The Return of the King. So it's just uncommon for the modern day Oscars to reward movies Best Picture that have already been so popular. I feel like they may think Barbie is a great achievement, and listen, Greta Gerwig, her last two movies got nominated for Best Picture. Barbie should get nominated for Best Picture, but my concern ultimately is that it won't be prestigious enough to win, which is why I have it a little bit lower in my predictions. And then I also, don't think it has enough ultimately acting support, but who knows? Maybe it wins screenplay, maybe we see America Ferrera surprise nomination, and then it's a real contender. It's still in my number 3 slot, so it's still got a good shot. Then in my 4th slot, I have The Holdovers, which is still for me a bit of a dark horse potential contender to win Best Picture. It may be a movie that just doesn't get in for editing, for example, come Oscar nominations morning, and we can sort of write it off for a Best Picture win. But it could get in for editing, and then all of a sudden there could be momentum behind the film. I could definitely see that happening. Why? Well, because it has a potential acting win. I think Divine Joy Randolph is the frontrunner to win for Best Supporting Actress. Like I mentioned, it's a little bit of a placeholder situation right now. I don't know if there's a lot of support for her performance, but if she wins at the Golden Globes, for example, and gives a great speech, next thing you know, she's the clear front runner. So we're still in this sort of limbo period right now, but let's say she does win for Best Supporting Actress. Boom, that's an acting win. That's really important for Best Picture. And then I also think it's a major contender in the screenplay category, Best Original Screenplay, because it's competing with a movie like Past Lives or with Barbie. And if you look at past Best Picture winners, the classic formula to winning Best Picture is getting either a supporting actor or actress win and then a screenplay win. You look at movies like Coda or Moonlight or Green Book or even Everything Everywhere All at Once last year. There is a clear path of a supporting acting win, a screenplay, and then a picture win. That is the classic path, and The Holdovers is a potential, that path is clear. It could win for screenplay, it could win for Best Supporting Actress. It's got the right emotional content of the film where it's very easy to understand. It's sweet and heartwarming. It reminds people of a better time in cinema in terms of the 70s, which is sort of seen as the best decade in American cinema history. So there's a lot of things I think going for it. Great ensemble piece. Alexander Payne's a director who's been nominated many times. You could have the narrative that Alexander Payne deserves his Oscar, but it's still in the 4th slot because I'm not 100% confident Divine Joy Randolph will win, and I'm also not confident that it will get in for screenplay. And if it doesn't get in for something like editing, that may be a sign of overall lack of support, but I still expect it to get nominated. Then in my 5th slot, I have Killers of the Flower Moon. I don't think this movie is going to win Best Picture because it's ultimately a little bit too much of a bummer, and we've seen the great director narrative sort of fizzle out, whether it be Alfonso Cuarón with Roma. That was sort of his passion project. Let's give Cuarón a Best Picture win. They don't give it to him. Steven Spielberg can't win for The Fabelmans, this biopic about essentially his own life. That I don't think the narrative of this is Martin Scorsese's last movie potentially, this is his last go-ahead, let's give it to him for a great achievement, a great career. They didn't do that for something like The Irishman. I think ultimately it's a little bit too much of a bummer to win Best Picture. That being said, Scorsese's still very well respected. The movie's been doing very well with critics groups. The New York Film Critics Circle, the National Board of Review both gave their award to Killers of the Flower Moon for Best Film, so it has the support there. Scorsese's, of course, a past Oscar winner, very well respected within the Academy. So I expect a nomination for sure. I also expect, multiple 3 acting nominations. So, who knows, maybe Lily Gladstone wins, and then maybe it wins for something like score in a surprise, and then maybe picture as well. I just don't really see the path of it winning, but I definitely think it's going to get nominated. It's been getting nominated everywhere, has that critical support, and has the respect of someone like Martin Scorsese or Leonardo DiCaprio or Robert De Niro. Maestro is in my 6th slot, which despite some tepid reviews, has been getting nominated in everywhere it needs to in terms of the Golden Globes, in terms of Critics' Choice Awards. The reason why I don't think it's going to maybe win Best Picture is because I think the Venice response was tepid. If you remember, it premiered at Venice and then it premiered at the New York Film Festival. New York Film Festival, with a bunch of New Yorkers, a bunch of Americans, really loved the film, but internationally at Venice, it didn't really resonate. And I think because after seeing the film, it does rely on the viewer to know a lot about Leonard Bernstein. It doesn't really give you a lot of the history and the details of his life. So I understand why a lot of international viewers were maybe less enthusiastic about the film, because they didn't really understand the context of why this guy was such an important composer. But that being said, most of the Academy is still American, and I think they understand the context and they appreciate the sort of bravura swing, and they appreciate biopics. Every year there's at least one biopic that gets nominated. This can be sort of the one this year, along with a movie like Oppenheimer. So it's a genre that they like. I think they like Bradley Cooper. They nominated his last film. I expect Cooper and Mulligan to get nominated, so there's acting support there. So there's enough, Netflix behind it, which always gets a nomination every single year. So there's enough support for this film. The reason why maybe I don't think I see it winning Best Picture is only because of the lack of international support, as seen by the tepid response out of Venice versus the glorious response out of the New York Film Festival. There's a little bit of a split, I think, between international and American voters. And while the Americans are still the largest group within the Academy, like I've mentioned in these videos for the past 5 or 6, 7 years, we've seen a larger increase in international members, and as a result, we've seen more international movies being represented. Then in my 7th slot, I have American Fiction, and I have it in here because 13 out of the last 14 TIFF People's Choice winners ultimately also got nominated for Best Picture. The last 11 in a row, which is a pretty incredible stat for the Oscars. We very rarely see things like that where you just look, the last 11 in a row, TIFF People's Choice winners also got nominated for Best Picture. That's really an incredible stat, and it indicates to us that the TIFF audience is very indicative of the Academy audience. They like the same amount of movies because the TIFF invites real people, so it has a little bit more of a populist feel versus just pure industry. For example, like a festival like Telluride, which is a little bit smaller. So I think just because of that, it tells us that American Fiction will be appreciated within the Academy, within moviegoers. It's an enjoyable film because it won the Audience Award. It's not just this critical, high-minded movie. It can be funny and witty and satirical, and you can eventually even have acting support too. I think Jeffrey Wright will get nominated for Best Lead Actor, and then who knows, maybe even a Sterling K. Brown for Best Supporting Actor. And there's a path where, let's say it gets both of those 2 nominations, then it wins for Screenplay, then it wins for Picture. It is a path for a dark horse potential contender to win for Best Picture. I don't think it will happen, but, there is a path towards it. The big thing I'm predicting it for a nomination is because of that TIFF stat, and because it has been showing up everywhere it needs to. I wondered when I first got nominated at TIFF, it didn't have a lot of buzz, but ever since then, it's really built up its buzz, releasing late, so we'll have top-of-mind awareness. I'm actually, pretty confident American Fiction will get nominated. Then in my 8th slot, I have Past Lives, which is the major indie movie of the year. Some years it's Everything Everywhere All at Once and Moonlight. In other years it's Minari or Calling Me By Your Name. I think Past Lives this year is more like a Minari or Call Me By Your Name. I don't think it's going to contend for Best Picture. It's been a little bit disappointing in terms of not really getting a lot of acting support aside from Greta Lee. Really sort of a screenplay-focused movie. Maybe The Woman Talking of this year, where it gets in for a couple of nominations above the line, but no technical, no editing, no score, but did overperform at the Golden Globes, which I think is notable, getting in for Celine Song for director, also getting in for screenplay. My big concern is that the movie doesn't have enough critical support in terms of the New York Film Critics Circle didn't give it its best award. Same thing with LA or Toronto or some of these more bigger awards groups, National Board of Review. None of them gave Past Lives their best film to sort of remind the Academy that this is a major contender movie. So I think it's going to be the story of past lives this season, of celebrating that it gets nominated, but maybe not gets in for a win. But still, it has critical support. It has been lingering since its Sundance release, has A24 behind it, and they're good at campaigning. So I'm not worried about it not getting a nomination. But at one point I thought I could maybe win Best Picture. I'm less so confident in that now. And then in my 9th slot, I have Anatomy of a Fall. And really in these last 2 slots, I wanted to include international films, because you may be looking at the Critics' Choice Awards and you'll go, Connor, it didn't get nominated there, it really disappointed. Aren't the Critics' Choice very indicative of the Oscars in terms of nominations? And yes, they are. But what we've seen with the Critics' Choice Awards, what we've seen from them in the past few years is they're mostly American. They don't have a lot of international members. So as a result, they nominate American and English films, and they don't recognize international films. And then when the Oscars happen, they do recognize those international films. If you take a look at last year, Critics' Choice didn't nominate All Quiet on the Western Front, only had 1 nomination, didn't get in for Best Picture. That movie ends up winning multiple Oscars and gets nominated for a bunch of categories. Same thing with Triangle of Sadness. So I'm betting, once again, that the Academy will be more international in terms of their makeup and therefore appreciate international films. And that's what Anatomy of a Fall has. Not only was it the Palme d'Or winner at Cannes, of course, the big international film festival, it also has a critical acclaim. It didn't light up the box office the way I thought maybe it would, but I still think it will have American support just because of the content of the film. Very entertaining, true crime, lawyer movie. This is a genre that has been appreciated by American audiences in the past, so I don't think they're going to push up against it. I don't think it's going to be a weird, unengaging international movie that doesn't connect with American voters and then gets snubbed. I do think it's going to connect with enough American voters. Plus, it is this sort of premier movie, Palme d'Or winner, critically acclaimed movie coming out of France. So I think the international members will really want to show their support for the film. And then if you look at a group like the Golden Globes, which is a little bit more international, they overperformed in terms of getting it in for Best Film Drama. Sandra Hüller got nominated. It also sort of surprised for a screenplay nomination. So I do think if it gets in for screenplay and acting, well, then it's a serious Best Picture contender because it has those 2 key groups. And because of the critical acclaim, I do think, and broad appeal, I do think it will get nominated. And then in my final slot, I went with The Zone of Interest. In a lot of similar reasons to Anatomy of a Fall, it being an international movie, the frontrunner to win for Best International Film category at the Oscars. But unlike Anatomy of a Fall, its content is a little bit more tricky. It's not as entertaining. It's harder to recommend. It's more of a movie you respect than necessarily you love. That being said, it's got a lot of things going for it. It's been winning a lot of critics groups along with Killers of the Flower Moon, won Toronto Best Film, Critics Group Best Film, it won the LA Film Critics Best Film, so it has some major critic awards. It's a movie that's being campaigned by A24, and A24, just won Best Picture last year with Everything Everywhere All at Once. They know how to get their movies seen and in front of Oscar voters. It's also a movie that's director, Jonathan Glazer, is well known within the industry. He's been directing music videos since the 90s. He's also directed many films with Hollywood stars, Nicole Kidman, Scarlett Johansson. So he's directed his fair share of Hollywood movies, so he's not somebody who's an unknown director. So I actually think as a result he will get in for Best Director as well. I think the movie will get in for a screenplay nomination. Probably no acting nominations, but sort of like a Triangle of Sadness type of movie this year, where it's respected, so it gets in for director because there's a clear auteur behind it. It gets in for screenplay, and then ultimately that is enough to push it over the edge for Best Picture because we have this 10th slot. It has the prestige and the sophistication, but also has kind of the name brand in the director, in the studio behind it. It came second place at Cannes to Anatomy of a Fall. It played at a bunch of festivals. It's definitely well respected, critically acclaimed. So it has critics support. It is the sort of sophisticated international film of the year, but it's also being campaigned by A24, so it gets it seen. So I think that's notable. We've seen Neon, for example, get their international movies nominated because they're a big, important American distributor in many ways, and I think A24 can do a similar fact here with these films by getting them in front of American audiences. We already know the international members are probably going to vote for it. It's getting it in front of the American audiences. So having a studio like A24, which knows how to do that, will be very helpful and get it in for this 10th slot. So even though, we're still a few weeks away from Oscar nominations, I feel pretty confident in this top 10. I have some possible contenders, but I think it's really starting to solidify as this being the top 10 for Best Picture. So I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments down below if you have anything different. But speaking of those possible contenders, my first one being May, December. You may say, Connor, why is May, December anything different than a movie like Holdovers, right? It could get in for 2 acting nominations, supporting actress and supporting actor. It could get in for screenplay. You've been talking about all these movies that get acting and screenplay. Why isn't it getting in? Well, pretty simply, I think Paul Giamatti is a lock for an acting nomination. I think Da'Vine Joy Randolph is a lock for an acting nomination. I think screenplay for The Holdovers is a lock. I don't think the same for May, December. I don't think it's going to get in for screenplay. It's a contender, but it's not going to get in, so that's not a guarantee. Julianne Moore is still not a guarantee. I think Charles Melton is pretty solid in terms of getting a nomination, but we still don't know. And if you look at the Critics' Choice Awards, Julianne Moore got in, Charles Melton got in, it got in for screenplay, it got in everywhere it needed to, and yet it still didn't get in for Best Picture. There's something about Todd Haynes' films. If you remember his movie Carol, got 6 nominations and didn't get in for Best Picture. His movie Far From Heaven got 4 nominations and didn't get in for Best Picture. There's something about people appreciating the parts of Haynes' films, but not necessarily the overall whole. So there's a little bit of a weird aspect to that sort of leaves me on the outside because I don't think it's going to get in for screenplay. And then it only gets in for a couple acting awards. That's maybe not enough acting support to push it over the edge to get in for Best Picture. And it's an American film, and there's already, 8 other American films that are going to be really well appreciated. Do I really think there's going to be a 9th? There's only going to be 1 international movie, despite every year we've seen the international presence grow within the Academy. I don't think so. I think those last 2 slots will go to international films. And then my other possible contender is The Color Purple. Despite disappointing in a lot of shortlists and critics groups, I still want to include it as a possible contender because it's still releasing late. I still don't think everyone has fully seen it. It's Warner Brothers. This is sort of one of their big movies of the year to campaign for. So it's going to have support. It's going to be seen. I think because it's a musical, it's different than some of the other movies. So just based on the fact that it's not a serious drama, it's different. It feels different. It could get nominated as a result of that. It could get still acting nominations with someone like a Danielle Brooks and maybe get some technical awards too in a production design or a costume design or a score. But it is slipping for sure, and it's missing on all those shortlists, and it missed in critics groups. So it's definitely a contender, but I don't think it's going to get in. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know your thoughts on my Best Picture nominations, what you think is going to get nominated as well. Please comment that in the comments down below. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.